our kids. He was on vacation last night. 6 days were devoted to our kids' places.
Yeah, and Jerry was in today. I said, when are you moving? Right now?
That's crazy. It's like, guys, just stop. You don't need to tear out walls and do all this craziness. Just get in, and then, we can deal with this stuff. I know she had all the flooring ripped out because it was like.
Oh, that's what he said.
And
He said, the
they
flooring's
knocked
all
out
in.
the wood, they put in a beam, every room had to be painted. I mean, it was nuts, and that's just the inside. But it's now to a point where they feel good about moving in, and the rest they can do later. Because, it's just an old house. It needs a lot of updating.
Yeah.
Tony and Jacob's been over there helping too. I mean, those guys are.
Oh, yeah. That's why Mickey said, I really didn't mind working Saturday because Jacob wasn't around either.
No. And I guess they have something this weekend, like family reunion or something.
Yeah. In Borden.
I call this meeting to order exactly at 5:30. Can we have a call to order and roll call of the council, please?
Russ Brown,
Present.
Darcy Long Curtis,
Present.
Tim McLaughlin,
I'm here.
Linda Miller,
Present.
Tanner Elliott,
Present.
Mayor Lawrence absent.
Correct. Would you join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'd like to get approval of the agenda. Are there any corrections to the?
Supplemental.
Oh, the supplemental added to be, here's an item to be added to the agenda. There's a presentation proclamation from Columbia Gorge Community College Workforce Project Update that's added to our agenda as number 5.
I'll move to adopt the agenda as amended.
I have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
And do we have any discussion? With no discussions, all in favor of accepting the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. All right, we're moving on to audience participation, right? Oh, not yet. We've got to give, forgive me, we've got to give Dan Spots an opportunity to come up and present, correct? Mr. Spots, would you please come to the microphone and give us your account of what's happening at the workforce? Yeah, and then Lisa, you're up next.
We have the report too from
Counselors? Mr. Spots, I think that if you're going to use that many Post-it notes, you should just have
Okay, got
one.
it.
Thank you, Counselor.
So what does it come?
So,
Got it.
before you, you have a packet, and I believe some additional information that Izetta sent out earlier. I'm here to provide an update on the Regional Skills Center and the Campus Housing Project, and to provide information and a request from you for any information you'd like from me before we present a formal funding request to you. So this is just kind of an update and some dialogue and opportunity to ask questions and see if I can answer them now. I'd like to start off, and first off, I'm not going to go through all of this, but I would like to go through a little bit of it. Last fall, we spoke of the regional workforce demand that we have in different skills in our area, everything from diesel mechanics, auto mechanics, welding, machining. And we have some additional figures that have come forward now, not only from our local area, but also from Eastern Oregon and Eastern Washington. And I'm bringing up that broader region because it speaks to the housing need as well. We have a need for skilled employees in our local region and across Eastern Oregon, Eastern Washington. The college does not have the capacity to meet those needs. We have a welding class. We do not have a full-fledged welding program. We do not do things like alloy welding, advanced welding. We do not have capacity for auto mechanics, diesel mechanics, machining, many of the other skills that our employers are looking for in the area. So that's the skill center part of this. And as a refresher, the state has allocated $7.3 million to the college for a skill center. The state legislation mandates a partnership with North Wasco County School District. This is focusing on grades 10 to 14 transition. So we're looking at things like dual credit, looking at the seamless transition from things like auto mechanics at the high school to diesel mechanics, things that the high school cannot do involving laser technologies that the college can do, other things that present themselves now, and then looking down the road in the future, 10, 20 years down the road. 10 years ago, who had heard of UAVs, the entire UAV sector? That's a new technology and an emerging technology. We don't know what else might be down the road in 10 or 15 years. So our challenge now is not only to build a skill center, high bay, flexible space to meet current demand, but also to envision what might be required down the road and be prepared for that. So that's the skill center, $7.3 million, with one caveat. We have to match that 7.3 by January 2019, which is just around the corner. Now, this has been a long time coming. There's been no surprise, and we've been working at it. The original request to the city and the county was a full match of 7.3. Then, last summer, we made some progress on that one because we asked the state, could we use investment in campus housing as the match? That had been precluded until now. But the state looked at voter intent in the enabling legislation that underscores all of this. It's called Article 11G to the state constitution. And the State Department of Justice took a broader interpretation of that and decided that campus housing as an essential component of our serving our students would be allowed as match. So that changed the game. Instead of asking for 7.3, we could develop a business model for sustainable housing and reduce the amount of the match. You funded, thanks to your generosity, a market feasibility study last fall. And you have a summary of that, an executive summary in front of you. I'll leave a full copy with Julie. The study shows that for a private or public investment, when we're looking to the college, this would be a debt investment or a public-private partnership of $3.8 million plus a public investment of $3.5, we could create a sustainable housing project that would in turn generate the match we need for the skill center. $7.3 million goes into housing, $7.3 for the skill center, a total combined investment of $14.6 million. That 3.5 is predicated on a very conservative occupancy rate, 74% occupancy. Now, based on a housing study that we conducted of our students in December and January, we think there's much more demand for it than that. We would probably come in closer to 95, maybe 90% occupancy, but we need to be conservative. So that's kind of the basis of what we're doing. One of the pages that you have in your handout, this one, is from the East Cascades Workforce Investment Council. I asked them for data. We need to plug some numbers into this. I went before the College Board a couple of weeks ago, and they're asking some good questions. What are the data? What is the workforce demand? Can you prove this? Numbers like this go a long way toward demonstrating that. This projects out to 2027. You also have in your packet this sheet, which talks about the site visits that we've conducted at the college. We've conducted 35 to individual companies around the region so far, and they demonstrate, really reinforce what you're seeing from the state information here. That yes, there is a demand for these things. But again, we're not building only for the current demand. We're building for projected and long-term things that we don't even know about. High bay flexible space, not a dedicated facility for any one particular area. The market study talks also about average rates, rental rates, things like that, and these are things that will inform the business model as we go forward. Average rents in the Dalles now are around $866 a month. Students are paying anywhere from $300 to $700, average of $570. Our target in developing student housing on the campus would be about $675 to $960. $675 for quad units. We're looking at a number of quad units, and then 960 for studio apartments, some of which would be dedicated to on-site property management. 6 to 9 of the units, and we're talking about 72 units total, would be dedicated toward Mid-Columbia Fire and Rescue. They have an apprenticeship program. They've not been able to place those apprentices because they don't have housing for them. So Chief Palmer, and you'll recall, he joined me at the podium last fall with this request, approached us asking for this partnership in housing. Others in the community have approached us as well. I don't want to bury you under all of that information, but I wanted to provide that update with you. There is one other critical point that I'd like to bring forward, and this is probably one of the most important things that came out in the feasibility study. It wasn't something we had anticipated. We knew there was a housing shortage. We knew that we did not have the capacity to provide the skills training. What we didn't know is that our key demographic, students ages 18 to 24, that demographic is flatlining in our area, in the Dalles and in Hood River. Over the next 10 to 15 years, the key demographic population that we need to attract as a community college from our local high schools is static, in some cases even declining. And I can provide demographic data from Portland State University Economic Center that will back that up. That was a finding in the report, and I cross-checked it with PDX. That tells me that even as we increase our capture rate of high school students, it's going to be difficult to maintain an ideal FTE population within the college campus. We're at 840 right now, down from about 1,200. If we capture, say, 30–40% of our high school population coming out, it's still going to be difficult to come back up to 1,200. We might be able to reach that. What we can do beyond that, 3 things. We can do dual credit, expand our emphasis on dual credit. We can expand our emphasis on distance education, and our new president, Dr. Marta Cronin, wants to put a particular emphasis on our digital presence. But then beyond that, also in Dr. Cronin's words, we can make Columbia Gorge Community College a destination institution. And we do that in part by providing the programs and in part by providing the housing we need to market, recruit students from outside our region. Certainly outside Hood River and the Dalles, reaching communities like Grass Valley, Goldendale, farther afield, we had one student commuting from Fossil to our nursing program. It's a long commute. How many other students like that cannot possibly make that commute that we could attract? And then let's get more ambitious. Let's talk about the Portland and Seattle metropolitan areas. If we had a community college with housing located in the Columbia Gorge National Scenic Area, that would be an enticement for recruitment. And then finally, international students program. That's something that every community college is doing very successfully. Other community colleges do it. There's no reason that we can't do it here, except we don't have a place to put those students right now. So there are many reasons why that housing is not only a match for the Skill Center, but it's an intrinsic part of our strategy to grow Columbia Gorge Community College down the road. So that's my update to you. I would welcome questions. Again, the idea being that I can take questions now, try to answer them, and then come back to you with additional information.
So Dan, your current registration rate is 840, that's for a full calendar year?
Yes,
And that's both the Dalles and Hood River campus?
correct. That's full-time equivalent.
So how does that compare to like the last 5 years? Do you have the data for each of those years?
Yes, we do.
And it's steadily declining from 1,200 down to 840?
It's not steadily declining, but overall, we've dropped since the recession. There's always a connection between community college enrollment and the strength of the economy. And that's the case not only for Columbia Gorge, but most community colleges, certainly in the U.S. As the economy grows, as people have employment, not necessarily family wage employment, but they're working 2 or 3 jobs, they don't have the time to go back to school. When they get laid off, when the economy tanks, then our enrollment increases. That was certainly the case back in 2007, 2008, during the recession. That's when you saw that 1,200 peak. We were lower before then. And so you've got this thing going on. We need to break that link between the economy and enrollment. You do that by injecting new things: distance education, dual enrollment, housing. It's kind of a strategy to try to reduce that intrinsic link between what enrollment does and what the economy does. And yes, we can provide those data, sir.
That 840 number, was that for 2017, or is that projection for this year?
No, that was 17, 18.
So where will the skill center, where's the footprint for that building?
Back in 2008, when the college had a bond measure to renovate the existing campus, build the campus in Hood River, acquire that campus and build a building there, and put up a new building here. As part of that, the college developed 3 sites on the Dalles campus with infrastructure adjacent to the access road. Those sites were undeveloped and remain undeveloped. 2 of those would be dedicated toward the housing project, 1 would be dedicated toward the skill center. It's one of the things that makes this a successful business model because we have the property and we have the infrastructure to the property. So our development costs are fairly low.
So that was old administrative housing that was torn down?
The site, the campus was renovated extensively. There was, there was a surgeon quarters, there were some wood frame structures. There was an old nursing quarters
Right.
that we had inherited from Judson Baptist, and
Correct.
perhaps even before that, that had been fallen into disuse. Reminder that the college campus, prior to our acquisition, had been vacant for about 6 or 7 years.
Correct. What about the skills center? Is there any possibility of using the Readiness Center complex and the high school?
Readiness Center, no, because we have contractual arrangement with Oregon Military Department. 1/3 is owned by Oregon Military, 1/3 used and sole use by the college, and then 1/3 shared space. You don't have the high bay space in the Readiness Center for what we're talking about. We have a mechanic shop up there that's too small and that's dedicated completely to the Renewable Energy Technology Program. So far as the high school is concerned, it's a very good question because we are engaged in conversation with the high school. We don't want to duplicate efforts. We're not asking for a local bond measure. Of course, the high school is going to be going out for a bond. So as they look toward planning a CTE facility of some sort, we want to do anything we can to integrate their plans with ours. Case in point would be auto mechanics leading to diesel mechanics. I might be simplifying things a little bit there, but we'd be looking for things that we can do as a community college that they would not be able to do as a high school. The entire, going back to that legislative intent, this is a partnership, a prototype facility, that's the language of the Oregon legislature, the Senate and the House, to create a seamless transition from high school to community college. So that prototype is kind of a magic word. That tells me the legislature didn't have a really precise idea of what they wanted to see. So it opens the door for some very creative discussions between the college and the school district.
Any other questions?
Yeah, how close are you to the match?
We have private developers who has expressed interest in the $3.8 million. And that's something that the college could take upon itself or do as a public-private partnership, gaining from the expertise of those developers. Those discussions are underway. They're,
Okay.
yeah, the 3.5 is the trigger point. We do not have approval from the college board. I should make that clear. We met with the college board a few weeks ago. They're asking questions. They want to know that we have a good, solid business case before proceeding. This is a big project.
Yeah, it is.
Once we have the decision from the college board, I'm looking for that 3.5. It's going to be a full court press.
Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you for the time.
Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Turn the microphone over to Lisa.
Well, actually,
Yeah, that's right, I was wrong. Lisa is next. I was looking for last
Lisa
month.
is next. All right.
I was looking for that one.
Ms. Park Larson, you're up, and then followed by Mr. Colbert, correct?
Yeah, well, Chuck did his presentation last month. so
Chuck did
that's
his
why-
presentation last month. You're off. So I'll do a report on the airport.
So good evening, our city council and manager. I have good news. I love reporting on things that came together and we made happen. So we had an opportunity, Kathy Fitzpatrick at McHead has been working on transportation, especially trying to get all the partners together for car-free transportation from Portland to here. They have placed, the Gorge Express is in place. This is its third year, and it's running 7 days a week right now. But this final stop is Hood River. So it stops at Multnomah, Cascade Locks, Rooster Rock Park, and then Hood River also is the last stop. So we wanted to find a way to get it passed into us, so include us in that car free. So Kathy had met with a gentleman, David, with Gray Line, and he came up with an idea, but he needed sponsors. So we got in the same room and figured it out. And so the chamber is using the tourism marketing dollars as one of the sponsors. The Corps of Engineers is sponsoring, and then Gray Line is also sponsoring. And we've come together and came up with a plan to meet a couple of needs. The Corps of Engineers needed transportation from the Dalles Dam Visitor Center to the Dalles Dam for their tours, and this is meeting that need. So how it works is you catch the Gray Line, Explore the Dalles bus in Hood River after the first stop from the Gorge Express. So the Gorge Express will come a little bit around 9 to 9:50, and then you can hop on this bus and come to the Dalles. Once it arrives in the Dalles, it does a hop-on, hop-off service, which we're kind of familiar with from the Empress. So we have the different stops that are on your little card. Those are there, and they're meeting all the attractions, including the Dalles Dam Visitor Center and the dam. It's an hour and 15-minute loop. It will do the loop 5 times, and then on the final part of the loop, you can catch the bus, go back to Hood River, and be there in time to take the last bus going back to Portland on the Gorge Express. The blue bus is free because this is a pilot, and that's why we did the sponsors part of it. So there is no fee to ride the blue bus, and you can ride it even if you live in the Dalles. So you just need to catch it at one of the bus stops, and you can do that. So we're going to be looking at other options. Maybe if there's a ship on Saturday, they're aware of what's going on and they can catch that, especially if they're not the Empress with their own hop-on, hop-off service. So there's bus stops in the downtown, so it's not that far from where they just disembark off the ship. So there's different things, and we're super excited. It's going to run through the 15th of September. We're going to monitor it and see how things going. I'm not expecting a lot of visitors on it until maybe middle of August to September, because we're just getting this out, but it's still there and it's available. We're in the midst of writing a script for all the stops. That was something we weren't aware that we could do until Saturday. So we're doing that really quick, and then we'll be doing this, and if this works, then next year we'll look at having the season from Memorial Day to Labor Day. For Saturdays only still, and if it is really, really working, then we'll look at the third year as a Saturday, Sunday trip. So this will allow people to actually come down because they can come on this on Saturdays and catch the CAT bus back to Hood River, then to Portland on Mondays, so it could be a weekend stay. So we're looking at how to promote those itineraries and do those different things. So it took a mad dash planning skills in a matter of about 2 weeks, and great printers and great workers at Optimus and Bonds. They came through and got us all of this stuff on Saturday when we got the final approval, and so we're pretty excited about it, but that's what we're doing right now with this part. So any questions?
Questions? Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Exciting. Good job.
Yes, thank you.
Continuing audience participation. During this portion of the meeting, anyone may speak on any subject which does not appear later on the agenda. 5 minutes per person will be allowed. If a response by the city is requested, the speaker will be referred to the city manager for further action. The issue may appear on a future meeting agenda for city council consideration. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Okay, we'll move on. City manager report.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just have one item for you tonight, and I brought some copies if anyone wants to pick those up after the meeting, but we did receive official notification that our enterprise zone was redesignated by the state. And so this little memo they sent out has all the maps and the boundaries and everything if you're interested in having that. So that's thanks to Matthew's hard work. I don't think Matthew, oh, hi.
He's back there.
Matthew worked really hard on this, along with Carrie Pipinich this year, to get this redesignated for our county. So good job, Matthew. That's all I have tonight.
Great. How about city attorney report?
Thank you, Councilor McLaughlin and Mayor Pro Tem I have a couple items for the council's information. We've finalized the description for the paralegal position. I'm not sure, maybe Dan can tell me when that gets actually advertised. Is it? Okay. So hopefully we'll get some good responses for that. Tomorrow, myself and the attorney for Tokala are having a phone conference with the representative from Boley who wrote the predetermination letter to discuss our concerns with that in the hopes that we can resolve that without having to perhaps go with a formal appeal. But we'll see how that phone call goes, and I'll keep the council and the agency board advised. But we're hopeful we can convince them of our position and be able to move on with that project.
Anything else?
No, that's everything.
Excellent. City council reports. Councilman Elliott.
Wow, changing it up.
I'm to my right, not to my left.
We had our urban renewal meeting last Tuesday. As everyone knows, we have a couple buildings for sale, so we continue to talk negotiations on those buildings and have a Q-Life meeting coming up this Thursday. Darcy and I will be attending that, so that's my report.
Councilwoman Miller?
I was also at the urban renewal meeting. It was a very lengthy meeting, and most of it was executive session. That's my report.
Councilwoman Darcy?
Maybe we shouldn't
Curtis
do it in
Long.
this order. It's like
confusing
Okay, so as Tanner mentioned, we'll be doing a Q-Life meeting next week, and had urban renewal last week, and most of it was spent in executive session talking about purchase and sale agreements of agency-owned properties and a review of the feasibility study that was done for a current exclusive negotiating agreement. Even though the city council is not going to meet in August, the urban renewal board is planning to meet. So if that's something you want to attend, you should keep that on your calendar and then watch, because if there isn't enough for the agenda, it will end up getting canceled. And then the last thing, I just want to make a report. I don't want to discuss at this time, but after the last council meeting, I was standing outside with Mr. Maya, the gentleman who filed the appeal of the Planning Commission's decision, and one of the neighbors discussing the portable classrooms up at Dry Hollow and fire safety. And Robert Bart, Jonathan Blum's partner in the project, approached Mr. Maya and started a verbal altercation with him. I continued speaking with the other neighbor until I heard what sounded like threats coming from behind me, and I turned around and asked Mr. Bart if he had just made a threat. He then proceeded to tell the three of us how he was going to bury us in legal fees if we appealed through LUBA. Robert finally left, and then Jonathan approached us and started another verbal confrontation. Since Mr. Maya and the neighbor were staying very non-confrontational and the whole conversation had gone on so long, I finally just walked off.
Councilman Brown?
I have nothing.
All right, and I just have a short report on last Friday. We had a meeting at the airport, 7:00 a.m. And during that meeting, we generally discussed the water, and there are some issues that are forming. They've been present apparently, but those were linked. There was a lengthy discussion about that. So just to give you a report on, we're in negotiations to look at how to expand and meter all of the lines coming into the airport to the individuals, so we have a better understanding of how much usage water in Dallasport to the airport. Secondary, the fly-in that happened in June was successful. There were some cancellations, but in all, the amounts of money that were raised exceeded the years past, and it was an overall success. And so kudos to the Dallasport Fire Department for the fundraiser, and to the airport management. So it was a great event for us. So that is about all. One more thing, and I'm just going to mention that the fire that happened at the substation fire, the loss of life is terrible. The loss of property is also terrible. There's implications that the city is somehow, the fire department and the city, we have no oversight on how that functions. So I've had people asking me, and I'm sure all of you, about the issues that the concerns about the response time. So I just want to let people know that we are not associated that as a separate district. And that's it. That's my statement. All right, we'll move on. Items of routine and non-controversial nature are placed on the consent agenda to allow the city council to spend its time and energy on the important issues and items. Any councilor may request an item to be pulled from the consent agenda and may be considered separately. Items pulled from the consent agenda will be placed on the agenda at the end of the action items section. We have only one item, approval of July 9th, regular city council meeting minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? Do I have a motion?
I'll move approval of the July 9th, 2018 regular city council meeting minutes.
And we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
And do we have any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion is carried. Number 10, contract review board actions. Award contract for janitorial services for the state office building. Do we have a report on this?
City Attorney Parker will give the report.
Okay, city.
The city owns the state office building, and we have 2 lease agreements with the State Human Resources Office and the Employment Department, and we're required to provide janitorial services for the tenants. The leases provide that the city pays the monthly costs, and then we are reimbursed for those costs through the rent that the 2 state agencies paid. We put out a request for proposals for the janitorial services back in June. We also posted a copy of the RFP on our website. We received one response from Thomas Metalak, who does business as Reflective Flooring, for the amount of $55,665. Mr. Metalak currently provides janitorial services for the City Hall, the City Police Department, Public Works Department, and City Library, and he's done those services very well over a period of years. So we're recommending that you authorize the award of the contract to Mr. Metalak, doing business as Reflective Janitorial, for the amount not to exceed $55,665.
How much of an increase is that over our previous?
It appears from what I understand in the budget, we showed $44,187 for this budget. Angie's not here.
That is correct. It's about 11,000 higher.
Was there any conversation as to what prompted what I would call a fairly substantial increase?
It went out for bid. So this is a different company that proposed, and the current people didn't propose, I don't believe.
They did not respond. There was also an issue with the current company not having a license required now by state law. They have to, I can't remember the term, but they have to get licensed by the Bureau of Labor and Industries, and we advised the current provider that they needed to do this, and they never did provide proof of that. So there was an issue about whether they were going to even qualify if they'd put a bid in.
Okay, thank you.
So that may account for the additional.
I would, yes.
Yeah. All right.
Is there any other people we could solicit for an RFP?
From what I understand, that in our current janitorial told us this, that there's very few providers in the gorge, that basically it would have to be people outside the area who might propose that. We put this out locally, and again, we only got one response. I think there are other janitorial providers in the Dalles, but they chose not to respond.
Or they may not be licensed.
That could be it too. This
They
is,
may not have that
yeah.
particular
All right.
license.
Any other discussion on this item? Do I have a motion?
I'll move to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Thomas Metalak, DBA Reflective Janitorial, for janitorial services for the state office building in an amount not to exceed $55,665.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's carried. Item B, consider authorizing purchase of 2 spare pumps for the new clarifier being constructed at the wastewater treatment plant. Report.
Public Works Director Anderson.
Public Works, oh, yes.
Snuck right up on you,
There he
didn't it?
is.
Stealth. Mr. Anderson.
Honorable Mayor Pro Tem and City Council, the Project to construct the new secondary clarifier at the wastewater treatment plant is going along quite well. If you've been by, you've seen a big hole, and now we're starting to work our way back out, and a lot of concrete's being poured. The design for that facility's been completed, and we reviewed all the submittals for the equipment that'll go inside that clarifier once the basin is constructed. We also now know that the pumps, what we call the RAS and the WAS pumps, RAS stands for return activated sludge, and WAS is waste activated sludge. The two of those pumps are not going to be the exact same model as we have for the existing clarifier. We're going to need backups, which help us to respond to emergencies in the case of a pump failure and minimize any permit violations. Staff is proposing that we use the same competitive pricing that was used with the original, or the purchase of the original equipment for the project, but that we make the purchase outside of the contract so we don't have to pay the 4% markup that we would within the contract price. To purchase those pumps directly will be $55,199. We do have funds available within Fund 57, which is the same fund where the rest of the project's being undertaken. And therefore, it's staff's recommendation that City Council authorize the purchase of a spare RAS and WAS pump or clarifier number 2 from ABSCO LLC in amount not to exceed $55,199.
There are two, one
There's
each.
one each.
Yeah, okay.
How often do these fail? Just out of curiosity.
Usually, if there's we were having quite a bit of problem with one of the existing ones, but it was during construction, and it was because we got a bunch of solids went over, and they were passing into the pumps and plugging the pumps, and we would pull the old one out, place a new one in, and then clean and repair and rebuild.
Was that part of the reason for a recent?
It wasn't part of the reason for the violations. We were dealing with that about the same time they were also dealing with violations, but it wasn't one of the reasons. It could have been worse if we hadn't had the spare pumps just to be able to do the swap outs.
Well, and part of the
But
problem
normal
is the
failure is
mix.
every several years.
I was just curious.
Yeah. I'm
Now,
sorry.
Dave, you talked about these being different pumps from the existing clarifier.
Yeah.
Will they be able to have some sort of an adaption plate, or are they different diameter inlets and outlets to be able to use
We
those?
have spares for the existing clarifier. The plumbing will probably be slightly different. We are doing the construction of the new one so that the electrical connections can be done with on-site staff rather than being down long enough to call an electrician. So they'll have quick connect plugs and electrical disconnects to facilitate those changeouts.
City Manager Kruger, is that what you were trying to say? I didn't quite catch.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was trying to say the reason to have them in stock is that there's a 4 to 6 month delay in getting them. So if we did have a breakdown and it was emergency, we'd be in a really bad situation for a long period of time.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other discussion on this item? Good. I'd like to hear a motion, please.
Do I need to abstain from this vote as I'm working on that project, Gene?
Well, I guess the question, would you actually benefit specifically from anything related to the installation of the pumps or?
Well, these are just materials, so I don't.
Right, I mean,
shouldn't be.
it sounds like for this particular item, you would not benefit personally, or your company wouldn't, it sounds like, so I don't believe that
That's
that's
how I
a conflict.
Interpret it, yeah. Just wanted clarification.
Good. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to authorize the purchase of spare RAS and WAS pumps for the new clarifier number 2 from ABSCO LLC in an amount not to exceed $55,199.
I'll second.
There's a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion is carried.
Thank you.
All right.
It's a
We're
hard
moving
sell,
on to
wasn't it,
action
Dave?
items. All right. This, yep,
Mayor Pro Tem, were you voting?
I can vote, yes.
Were you voting?
I didn't, but I will. I'm in favor.
I was voting unanimous, because I want to make sure.
So that's good.
Wearing
All right.
both hats, huh, Tim?
Pardon?
Wearing both hats.
I am, right here. Okay, now we're moving on. I'm just trying to think of the next thing coming up. Adoption of resolution number 18-022. A resolution of City Council denying appeal of number 31 through 18 of Planning Commission Resolution number PC 574-18, and affirming the Planning Commission's decision approving minor partition number 349-18 and adjustment to 18-036 of Jonathan Bloom to partition 1, 8,778 square foot lot into two 4,389 square foot lots, reducing the minimum lot size from 5,000 square feet to a minimum lot width from 50 feet to 46 feet on property located at 1605 East 19th Street.
City Attorney Parker will give the staff report.
I think you've summarized it mostly in the title.
I know, that's a lot.
The council had your public hearing on this appeal on July 9th and made the decision to vote to, at that time, to deny the appeal and direct staff to prepare the resolution setting forth the findings of fact and conclusions of law, which staff has prepared that in resolution number 18-022. This is sort of the final step in the process. The notice of the decision would then be sent to all of the people who testified and to the applicant, and would trigger the time for any possible appeal of this decision. So this is essentially somewhat of a housekeeping measure just to finalize your decision.
And my ex parte discussion has been given to the city council.
All right. With that being said, we have the report. Any other discussion on this? All right?
Actually, I do just want to say that I understand it's not going to change anything, but one of the key elements, I think, was talking about how they were going to be good neighbors and work with the neighborhood in order to make something that didn't diminish the value. And I don't think, based on what happened in my experience out front of the courthouse, I don't think that's really going to happen.
I originally was for the partition, and it should actually have only been regarding a partition, but I have done a little more research and have thought about what my vote was before, and I am changing it.
So how do we proceed with that?
You don't have a motion on the floor, so
More discussion?
We're just discussing.
well, you should have a motion on the floor to discuss anything.
Oh,
but-
okay, okay.
Okay, can we have a motion to get, to come back and discuss this item one more time? How this would have changed everything and have to go back through the process?
Jean, would you like to answer that?
Well, I believe if there's going to be, because I understand from what I've read in land use law that the decision is not considered actually final until you adopt the findings in writing, so it is possible for a council member to change their vote. But ultimately, if the vote is going to be changed and to uphold the appeal, you'll need to provide some direction to staff as to the reasons why you felt that the criteria was not met, and then we would have to draft that resolution for you to review and determine that. So again, we would look to you for some input and direction about where you felt the application didn't meet the criteria, and then we would then draft that resolution based on that.
It has to be based on the findings
Of
the
the,
Ludo.
of
which
the
is what we
Ludo.
went through.
Oh, okay. So,
Again, that's why I guess we took a fairly detailed point to try to address each of the criteria and indicate, what was brought up both for and against, and to address that, so.
well, if I remember correctly, it was pretty confusing.
Well, it can be. Hopefully, we tried to make it as clear as we could.
I move that we table resolution number 18-022 until the next city council meeting.
Postpone.
Okay, I move to postpone.
So we're tabling
And,
this.
and,
Okay, well, maybe the motion should get on, and I
yeah,
have
we
a comment
should
about
all
that, so.
second.
I'll second that.
Thank
We
you.
got a second. And do we open it back up for discussion, or we go ahead and take a vote?
No, just a second.
All right.
Let's open it for discussion then.
All
so
right.
Jean can-
Well, one problem would be is that if you do table it to September, there's a 120-day period where the council has to take a final decision on the application. If you pushed it to December, you would go past that, and the applicant at that time would have an opportunity to seek a mandamus to get approval for it because we wouldn't have a final decision, so I wouldn't advise the council to
Or
push
we
this
can
in
schedule
September.
another meeting.
Well, again, it would have to be before August 21st, I believe is when the 120 days is up, so. there
Well, I
would
think
need to be
doing
a-
it right is
Say that
more
again,
important.
when was the 120 days up?
I believe it was August 21st was when the 120 days was up.
From the original decision?
From the date it was deemed complete.
Yes, Julie?
If the city council wishes to postpone to a time date certain, we could do that, but at this meeting now, we would need to have the city council tell us what findings were not met and what your findings would be, because we have to be able to have direction to put together a resolution that supports whatever your findings are.
Well, the reason I was moving to table it, which you said was postponed, is because I feel like there's a lot of confusion and people need more time to review it. That was why I proposed it. And I don't,
So if
I
we-
just postponed voting on this, so I don't see why we have to tell what we want to do. I postponed voting on this so we could go back and look at it and bring something forward and really be sure that we understand, because this is important.
It's very important, I agree. So we provided the findings that the council arrived at the last meeting. So through these findings, if any of you think any of it is incorrect or confusing, if you could tell us tonight, assuming that if it's confusing, you know which one was confusing and we can clarify.
I did not bring my notes because I did not anticipate.
Right, we can't prepare anything without that input from the city council. So to
Correct,
schedule a
but I
meeting
can
for a
still
month
table an
away-
issue.
Absolutely, I'm just trying to explain that if we have another meeting and it's in August and we're hitting that deadline, we need the information from you so we can prepare it. So then we're looking probably at 2 meetings, if that's how you want to do it, so you can come back to a meeting and say what's confusing and what you need to be clarified or what you want to change, so we can have time to prepare the resolution.
I understand what you're saying, and I understand about the time, but if we can't come back and discuss as a council what we thought was confusing and make sure that we are all together saying what we want in that resolution, if we're somehow all going to you behind it so you can write a resolution,
Yeah,
we
don't
can't
wanna
do that.
No, so that's what I'm saying. If you can tell us tonight, if you can look at the findings and tell us which ones you need clarification on, then we can start working on that. And you all can discuss it as a body right now.
Well, I'm not changing my position. Counselor Brown, are you changing?
Do you know
We, we have planners and attorneys on staff that provide the law, the legal description and everything. Personally, I don't think waiting a month is going to, there was no emotion, I'd like to see that lot stay as a whole lot and a real house be built on it. But that wasn't what we were talking about, and I can't make my decision based on emotion. I make my decision based on the information
Okay.
that's been given to us and the fact that our attorney and our planner both said this.
But I'm sorry.
I don't like it, but I have to make my decision based on, I don't think putting emotion into this is appropriate. I think that
I'll tell you, I voted no last time, and I'll tell you why. I was hung up on 10.3.080.020 B6 to allow an increase in density in the RL zone. And the question that I asked Mr. Harris was, how can you say that this doesn't increase the density in an RL zone? And he said it met the criteria of units per acre, or density per acre. But my question is, how do you know how many people are going to live in a household? You're going to go off of what the national database is? If you're telling me that this is not increasing the density in an RL zone, I'd argue that point all day long.
So I don't disagree with that, and I guess what troubles me as much as anything is that you would think the covenants for that block of property would have protected it, but
Well, what I wanted to say, if you don't mind, was that last time several of you kept saying that you didn't see how you could not vote yes, that you had to do it. And I believe that is a false assumption or a false reading of the ordinance, because the ordinance says, if this, staff can approve it. If not, goes to planning, which it didn't, so it went to planning on two different things. And then planning sent it to us. So we had a right to say yes or no, and I felt like people were feeling like they were forced into voting yes because of how it came to us. So that is a major concern of mine, and,
Well, then that's a misconception, because I listened to the facts, and the facts were relevant, and I made a decision based on, not emotion, but it was on the fact base. It fit within the law, the ordinance, and we also understand that we're going to have to change and reduce sizing because of the boundaries around our city. So all of those things entered into my decision, but my decision stands, and I wasn't forced into anything, and I don't feel like there was any coercion. I was just making it based on what I heard.
so my motion that's been seconded that we are discussing is whether or not we are going to take more time and come back to this.
That's
Counselor
understood.
Elliott, after reading the finding number 10 on page 62 of the agenda packet, and page 63, that talks about the acreage, were you still confused? Is that one of the points you would want more clarification on for another meeting?
I don't think that it's confusion. I think that, you know, it's a perception scenario. I perceive this as increase in density, and I think there's a reason that it came to the planning commission and it came on to us, because it couldn't be, it wasn't black and white for the planning department to make that decision. That's why it moved on.
Well, Counselor, I think I should point out that as we state in the finding that there's clear specific language in the Ludo that says this standard about density is applicable to new subdivisions and planned developments, but does not apply to infill development approved through the minor partition process. So that was what we relied upon to basically say that this whole argument really is sort of somewhat irrelevant, because our Ludo says that those standards don't apply.
So my main argument at the last one is it changed the nature of the neighborhood. So is that 10.3.080.040?
are we really changing the nature of the neighborhood by drawing a line through the middle of the
Yes,
property?
'cause they're making totally
And if he
different
builds nothing,
properties.
nothing will change in the neighborhood. There'll still be trees and weeds and everything on the property.
And that's what
I'm-
this was all about, was partition only.
Yes, we're dirt, we're talking dirt.
That's what I understood.
I understand all the rest of it, but the rest of it's emotion. It's not,
It's not emotional.
until somebody puts something on that piece of property, we've not changed anything.
Well, then how would you ever decide? I mean, we know this goes together. You don't have a piece of property and split it in half because you're not going to do anything with it.
Absolutely not. But the only thing this action dealt with was drawing a line down the middle of the dirt. It doesn't have anything to do with the structure that may or may not be built on it.
Okay, but if it didn't, then why would the thing about density even be in here? Because if it didn't matter what was going to be built on it, how would we know what the density is going to be?
How do we know what the density is going to be until something's built?
Well, I'm saying that it's in here, it's part of the discussion,
Well, it would-
it's part of the things that we have to consider, so obviously it is something we're supposed to consider.
It was basically being considered because it was a point raised by the opponents who argued that you couldn't allow it, and we as staff saying it really doesn't, it's not even applicable because of the language in the Ludo. It says this standard about density really is not grounds to deny it. So we had to address it because it was raised as an issue by the opponents.
And
So
that's
this-
why you couldn't address.
Well,
So these are
Prove
answers
it.
to the appeal,
Right.
not to our, not.
That's why you couldn't approve it within the department?
They did, it was approved and then it was appealed to the planning commission, isn't that correct?
yes.
Well, actually,
It was-
I think the
the planning
director made a
commission
decision.
voted yes,
Yeah,
and
I
it
think the
was appealed to
director
us.
of the department, they made a decision that this one could be raised to the planning commission. There wasn't really an
I
initial
see.
appeal. The first hearing was the planning commission,
Okay.
and that decision was appealed. But the department felt that there was some issues that they wanted to have the planning commission weigh in on and allow for some public testimony and comment on.
I don't like it, but I have to make my decision based on something
Oh, okay.
solid.
Grounds to deny, and there just wasn't
No.
insufficient in
It
line.
was just confusing.
But I do have one question about compatibility, and if there was a covenant that was presented to the other property owners in that division as it was developed, was there anything implied that those lots would never be reduced? I heard that somewhere in the testimony. that-
Well, they argued that, but again, there's nothing in Arludo about enforcing private covenants. That would be a matter, I think, for the homeowners and the homeowners association to possibly enforce, but it's not a matter that Arludo addresses.
I needed to ask that question.
My
Do they have
understanding
a-
was they didn't have a homeowners association.
That's
and
what I was
without
gonna
one,
ask.
the
Do they have a
covenants
formal
were-
CC and a homeowners?
I don't know.
Association.
I don't know, but again, that's a matter of private covenants and a civil matter that's not
And
our
you're
authority to
100%
enforce.
sure on that?
Yes.
Okay, that's-
Okay, since I muddied up the waters, but there's a motion on the floor.
Yeah, to postpone action on this action item. It's still on the floor. And have we have gotten a
I'm-
second?
We did, but I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Okay,
Okay,
Seems
So-
like you guys want to vote on it.
okay.
so we're going back, and the vote could come back. All right, well, now we have had discussion. Any further discussion? All right, we have a motion on the floor. Owen, yes?
Counselor withdrew her motion to postpone, so you don't have
Now
a
you
motion
need a
on the
motion.
floor.
Okay.
We've rescinded it.
Okay,
Is there any,
so,
well, thank you. Now where do we go?
Now you can ask for another motion.
I'd like to ask for another motion.
okay, move to adopt resolution number 18-022, denying appeal number 31-18, and affirming the planning commission's decision approving minor partition number 349-18 and adjustment number 18-036 of Jonathan Bloom to partition 8,778 square foot lot into two 4,389 square foot lots to reduce the minimum lot size from 5,000 square feet and to reduce the minimum lot width from 50 feet to 46 feet on property located at 1605 East 19th Street.
Now we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
2 and 3. So the motion carries. All right,
I'm sorry.
that's okay.
It's important.
We're going to move on. We're going on to identify legislative priorities for the 2009 legislative session for League of Oregon Cities. We have a report.
We do have a report, thank you. The League of Oregon Cities asks all the member cities to give their top 4 priorities for upcoming legislative sessions. And so what we've done in the past, and we've done again this year for you, is our management team has done a review of the ballot and given you our top 4 priorities based on what the issue is and what the league says they would do as our lobbyists for that. So our top 4 to get you started tonight was the mental health investment, the 911 tax legislation, infrastructure financing and resilience, and the safe routes to school match. And then I also just put the next top 4 ranked, that we ranked as staff. It is entirely up to city council what you choose to put forward, and it is basically one vote of all the 240 member cities of the league. So we defer to you to give us your top 4, and whatever you choose as a group is what we will submit on your behalf.
Those 4 sound good to me. Anyone else?
I support.
Sounds good to me.
How about Councilor Curtis Long?
Long Curtis?
Long Curtis?
Yes. I'm nodding, yes,
Just a
those
little
sound good.
dyslexic? Curtis, all right, Ann?
Elliot Tanner, yes.
Yes, all right. Did you check the inside of your underwear to make sure that's your name? All right, now, all right, so we've got,
So we have consensus then?
do we have consensus? It
Okay.
appears, yes. Everyone in the affirmative.
Thank you. With
All right,
that,
we're moving on to approve of ASOS weather station lease with Federal Aviation Administration at Columbia Gorge Regional Airport.
City Attorney Parker is providing the staff report for you.
Catch up to the staff report here for a second. Sorry.
While we're waiting, we'll get that sent to the League of Oregon Cities for you tomorrow.
All right,
We really should make Mr. Colbert come up and sit at the microphone.
You be nice to him.
Yeah,
Why?
Chuck may have some comments about this if you want to. The city and county have had a lease agreement with the FAA to lease the ASOS. It's essentially a weather station at the airport for some time, I think, going back to the 2000s, I believe.
Yeah, 2002, I believe, Gene's when they first put the system in.
The current lease expires in September of this year. The FAA has proposed to renew the lease with essentially the same provisions as the current lease with the same amount of rent. But they did ask for a 15-year term, which I think we've had 10-year terms, I think, before. So this would be a bit of an addition. But the rent to be the same, the airport board looked at this and felt that it should stay the same. One of the primary reasons was that if we were to not have this lease, we would have to pay for the cost of equipment, which I understand is about $20,000.
Or more.
We don't currently have that, so the board felt that even though it is a little longer-term lease, it's important to have it there, and they voted to approve it. The Klickitat County Prosecuting Attorney's Office has also reviewed and approved the lease. So we're recommending that it be signed and sent on to Klickitat County for their approval and then to the FAA.
okay.
I'll move to approve the lease with the Federal Aviation Administration for the ASOS weather station and authorize the mayor to sign the lease pending the approval of the Klickitat County Council. I think that has to be said, right?
That's good, there's a motion, and do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, second, any debate, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? And I am in favor. All right,
Thank you.
oh my goodness, is there anything else?
Leaving the building.
Anything else? This meeting is adjourned.
Good job.
Well, there were some rough spots.
Well, but you did a great job of managing your motions and seconds.
Have you seen the cracker box that
Okay,
she's building
good.
on 14th Street?
We have the lease here for you to sign.
They're all